This is near and dear to my heart. The only thing that's coming between us is this right here, right?
Right.
And I'm getting adjusted to it. I was just telling Miss Kay, said, oh, my skin is about to start breaking out. There's something going on right here. And you know, I'm a little old school. I might try olive oil, but I will do Vaseline. Okay? I'm Cynthia Malone, and I'm the co-founder of a nonprofit organization called Chipping Away at Heart Disease. That's almost the beginning and the ending, but there's so much more I want to share with you. I want to talk with you and give you our personal story, let you know what my organization has done now for nearly 10 years. 10 years. Now, I was the cheerleader behind the coach. I was okay just to give you my name because he was out in front of everybody. He was the one that was coaching the teams and leading the teams. He was an educator and a coach, and he was one from his heart. My husband was the late coach, Chip Malone. Narleski is his real name, but nobody knows who Narleski is. But they would know Coach Chip Malone. He was at Warner Robins High School. He was the head varsity boys basketball coach there. And being in Houston County nearly 30 years, I have a story that I can't wait to share with you. Now, before I do that, though, I always break the ice. Okay, she's out of the room. It's clear. Okay? When I talk with my groups, you are my 50th group. So yay to you and thank you so much. Because especially for a person who doesn't do this kind of thing and it's a little outside of the comfort zone, I have found it. I found my voice. You know, I found that and I got that little thing and I tell her all the time, I won't be still. I don't know where to tell you to stand because I won't be standing there. I won't be in that view, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we do and now that you know why we do it. The organization began in 2010 after the heart transplant of my husband. What we decided after having gone through what we did, that we had to figure out a way to give back to the community. Basically, him being a coach, I could call a school, any high school or college, and say, I have a coach that's had a heart transplant. He'd like to come in and talk to your nursing students. And that's how we got started. It was mom and pop. And we get up early because he's the type person that says to be early is to be on time. So I would get to the schools before the janitor got there. And I'm sitting in the car eating my sausage biscuit going, what am I doing? What am I doing? But this is what I'm doing. I am an advocate for heart health education, prevention, and organ and tissue donation. I tell people all the time, you know what? There are some things that we have done and a lot of things that we've done through his coaching career that as a wife in the stands, I wouldn't agree with. You know, I wouldn't have done that. I'd say, well, why did you call that play? Why did you do that? Or even better, why did you take him out? You know, I would say that to him and he'd tell me, he said, well, first of all, I'm your coach. And I thought, ew. And then he says, but I'm going to put them in a position to win. And that's what my job is. He made some boys, now that I see them, I recognize their eyes, have now become men. And they're the ones who now know they have to get to work on time and they have to do things that are suitable and natural and normal for their families. I wouldn't have chosen me. I probably would have taken me out and benched myself a long time ago. But I decided not to do that so that we could help save lives. We have 4 annual programs a year. Those 4 programs help me to uniquely tell people who really don't want to listen about heart disease and that subject matter, what it takes to have a healthy heart and what happened with our story. So we have in February, and you can imagine February is Heart and Stroke Awareness Month, right? So you can imagine how busy it is for an organization called Chipping Away at Heart Disease. What we have, 28 days in February, I'm usually presenting or have an exhibit table or something 15, 20 days in February. We're booked. But I also remember the other people. We have the Hearty Laughs Comedy Show. The Hearty Laughs Comedy Show is held at the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame. It's held here in Macon, and we bring the clean comedic team to come in, and we release stress. When I speak to you, it is from the experience, the exposure, compassion, and passion. Those 4 elements you're going to pick up on while I'm talking with you this morning. I have to tell you what we experienced. It wasn't me who actually went through it, though my husband did. I was exposed to it. Compassionate about it, because the story sometimes, because what you are chosen to do is going to bring a lot of compassion out of you. There's some people that are meant to do that, and I love you for it. I love you for it. And the passion is to get people motivated to do those things that we need to do in order to live a heart-healthy lifestyle. Wouldn't you agree that's something? You see all the red? Y'all, I didn't wear red today. So, every now and again, I interject humor. My subject matter is so serious, and I'm so compelled to it that I have to remember not to do this, because I can't do a fear factor and get people to do the things we need to do. Come on. I feel like the Karate Kid sometimes. Mask on, mask off. You see, we can't get people to do some of this, so this is not going to work. I've had women to walk up to me, my exhibit table, and say, I'm going to eat what I want. And I used to think, oh, I haven't done a good job. I didn't explain it. I should have told them some more things about the nutrition facts. I should have explained to them, your fist is cup size. Your palm, that's 3 ounces. Your thumb, that's 1 ounce. I know what it's like. My husband used to cook like that. We ate right. He's a coach, remember? We ate right. He put the plate down, and I'd look at that piece of chicken breast, and I'd look up at him, and I'd think, right? But there were things we had to do, and we did those things. But he still got sick, y'all. And he still got very sick. Oh, I'm going to tell you about it. So I do interject humor. You'll hear that, because sometimes, especially with over 52,000 individuals that we have presented to Middle Georgia and beyond, you can get home and kind of relive a lot of those things. You know, sort of like the nurses who used to care for us. They'd come in, and she'd be tense, and she'd put her purse down. And I have something I want to ask her because I've waited all night long. And I've held on to it because she's the one I want to ask. Oh, I want to call Stan because my husband's been doing this all night, and it's his beard, and it's itching. And I know Stan can give a great shave, and he can talk to him about sports, because I got tired of talking about sports all the time. Okay? And I know, and I'm waiting for Stan, and I see Stan come in, he takes that's the stuff off, and he puts it down at his station. And I'm like, where's he going? He should come see us first. That's how they're going to love you. That's how they're going to want to see you. Look at this country. We're some great people, aren't we? We're some great people, but imagine coming from another country and they say things, because we say some real interesting things. Let me think. By George. Now imagine coming from another country and you don't know if that means go by George, passing to get where you're going, or by George. You don't know what that means, but it means something that's saying something totally different, and we know. I say it sometimes, for Pete's sake, I don't know Pete. I don't know him. So imagine someone who's never been sick a day in his life. He was playing college football at Jackson State University. He was playing back in the day with people you guys probably won't remember, people like Walter Payton, that era. Jackson State, okay. So he was playing football with those guys and had a knee injury. And with that, he said, well, if I can't coach, if I can't play the game, I'll coach the game. And that's what he decided to do. And he did that very well. Very well. He said, well, if I don't win the game, they'll know they've been there. Okay? That type of person. So that type of personality, that type of ego would help in his downfall when he got sick. Okay? So I did everything I could to help him, but he was the one that had to go through it. Imagine never being sick a day in your life, and you go to your doctor after having taken the physical exam. In Houston County, 1997, the student athletes as well as the coaches would have to take the physical exam. Because otherwise, I wasn't going to get Brother Man to the doctor. Okay? I'd say, how you feeling? He'd pop a pill. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm fine. So we started off with Rolaids. We went from Rolaids to Tums, neither of which worked. Then he decided Docalex. We know what that's for, right? Okay? So self-diagnosing. One of the many things that I tell a lot of my audiences is not to be in denial and not to self-diagnose. There are professionals that can help us. There are people that went past the test to be able to help us. And we should rely on that, and we do. But sometimes we wait late, don't we? We wait. It's an afterthought. You know, it's an afterthought. And so now here he is, 1997. We're sitting in the doctor's office, and actually he'd gone twice before me. But when he went to the doctor and he came home, I said, well, what did the doctor say? He said, I'm to the good. And I was like, oh, you know, his terminology, I'm to the good. I'm like, good. But then he's taking something that looks like a little pill. And I'm like, what is that? He said, oh, he told me I had some high blood pressure issues and borderline diabetic, and I'm taking this little pill just like Mama took. And I'm thinking, oh, history, family history. Okay, but I didn't know better. Now, what was I going to do? I didn't know better. But when he took that little pill, I looked at it and it said Coreg. Are you guys good with the medical terms? And okay, good. I'm so glad, because I'm sometimes with high school students and elementary school students say, be smart with your heart, you know. So we're on Coreg, all right? And he's taking this medication, this pill for the diabetes. And I said, okay, let's figure out what we're doing here. So I'm going to, because we didn't have the Googling and we weren't doing all of that at that time, neither did Houston Healthcare have the cardiac advancements. They didn't have the advancements that they do now, you know, and so we didn't know where to go and what to do. Referrals. Now I give referrals. It was a learning process, but I got it now, y'all. I got it now. We sit in front of the doctor. I said, I'm going with you. He said, man, what? I said, yeah, I'm going to go with you next time. The third visit, we sit down. Dr. Struth looks at him and says, so, Coach, what are you going to do about that heart transplant? And I looked at him, and he looked at the doctor as if to stare a hole through him. He looked at his watch, and he says, Doc, ain't nobody going to crack open my chest. Practice begins at 4. Is there anything else? And I said, did you hear what he said? He said, I'm all right. See, there he is self-diagnosing, thinking that Coreg was going to turn it around. I'm an athlete. I'm strong and powerful. You know, we don't get sick. We're invincible. What? He said, Coach, you have the heart of a 60-year-old man. At the time, he was 43. All right, 1997. Fast forward, we're living life. Everything's going fine. All is well. We're building a house. We're raising our family. Things are going well. And all of a sudden, he says, I think I'm going to retire next year. That would be 2009. And surely he did. He retired. And when he got home one day, we had the kitchen table filled with brochures, because they taught us that you save your money and you invest and you do all these things while you're working, so that when you retire, you can do some things you've always wanted to do. So we thought that was the best thing to do. We had some exotic places and romantic places on the kitchen table, and the garage door goes up. Well, we always met each other at the door, so I go to the door and I look out, and he's using the tailgate of the truck to come inside. Going, what's wrong with you? 1 year to the day, 1 year after retiring, June 2010, we're headed to Houston Healthcare. Now he has the edema. His feet are swollen, unrecognizable, shoes don't fit, pants don't fit, and he's gasping, thinking if I could urinate, I would get some of this fluid off of me. I don't understand what this is. I don't know what to do. And I'm thinking, hospital, hospital. And he said, no, 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 no. Let's see what's going to happen, because our oldest daughter is about to move. She had gotten a modeling contract. She was going to go to Atlanta, set up her house, and we were going to load up the truck and move to Beverly, you know. We were ready to help her move and start her new life, and couldn't do it because that night he ended up in the hospital. Cardiomyopathy. Can I tell you what was going on with him? Let me show you. And I kept this because it's in his handwriting, but other than because it's in his handwriting, it is because this is what he would use when he would go for the presentations. We started off in Jones County, chipping away at heart disease. And we moved from Jones County to heaven knows where. We would drive in places and we didn't know where we were. And we'd pull up in this little town, and the townspeople all knew everybody. So they knew we were strangers, right? And so when we pull up and we come to the next stoplight, you know, because it was always one at every foot, you know, and it was like, this is all they have to do is hit traffic signals in this town. And you know, we'd say, where are we, or where's the school? The school would be huge and beautiful, and it was just, are you sure this is where we're supposed to be? You know, I hadn't started my sausage biscuit yet. So he would take this with him. This is what was going on with him. Okay, ready? He would usually write this down on, because he didn't know what smart board was. We didn't know what smart boards were. So he'd write it down, dry erase board, and put it on the board for the students. Congestive heart failure. Congestive heart failure. He sat up on 4 to 6 pillows to try to keep those fluids. He would explain to the students it was like suffocating. And the high schools were like, They asked him, Coach Malone, what was the one thing you wanted to eat or do after your heart transplant? He called a student up. He had, you know, the red pillows that they give you after the surgery that you're supposed to hug and all? He has 3. I'll tell you why. He would put the red pillow down and the student would lie on the table. He said, this right here. He said, when I got out of the hospital and I had my transplant, this is what I wanted to do. He said, you guys go home and go to bed and go to sleep. Lie flat, turn to your side and everything, sleep. He said, but I could not breathe. I could not lay flat. He said, I couldn't sit. He had taken the kitchen chair and put it in front of the dresser in our bedroom and put a pillow on top of it to sit down and just like heads on the desk. That didn't work. Recliner didn't work. I don't know why we thought this, but we thought sleeping head to foot, you know, so he was at the foot and I was at the head. Didn't matter. But you try anything. You know, it's like that thing that we say. We say things and we don't know what we're saying. And I said, well, what do you think? Should we take your temperature? He said, what is that going to do? Yo, I don't know. I don't know. But I was grasping for it. Love is a powerful emotion, isn't it? You'll grasp for anything to try to make something better for anybody you love. And he told me, he said, Cynthia, I don't know if I have any enemies, but if I do, I wouldn't wish this on. Congestive heart failure. Cardiomyopathy. So I understood that to be, it wouldn't pump hard enough. The heart wouldn't pump hard enough to get the blood throughout the body. It was not as pliable. It was hard to pump. And I said, what are you talking about? An involuntary muscle. My brain doesn't have to tell my heart to pump. Go, baby, go, right? But no, cardiomyopathy. His heart was enlarged. Gout. Oh, boy. Gout had him on crutches. Gout had him on, he was coaching on crutches. You know, now I'm going to say this, and it'll be fine, and some of us get it. Gout was in his toe. Okay? He didn't want the sheet to touch his toe. It was so painful. And so he would, during the coaching, the first half of the game, he'd come out because he would dress not in the coaches, he would dress Bill Cosby sweaters and nice slacks. Y'all with me? And so he'd come out, but because that toe was hurting, he put a little extra on that. All right, gout. Had his knee swollen so bad. His bursa sac and his elbow started to swell. The bursa sac, I've never heard of it. What? So we go and figure out what this is. The size of a football on the side of his arm. Y'all, they took him into the hospital. They had him scheduled. They put this gown on him. I won't tell you what word he used. And they put this gown on him and everything. The doctor came in and said, okay, coach. Everybody called him coach as if he coached them all because they knew it, sort of. And they said, you ready? He said, you know what, man? I changed my mind. Just wrap it and let me go. He wouldn't do it. The fear factor. Fear can grip you. Gout, the uric acid just hurt him so bad. So we had to figure out what we were eating. We ate healthy. What is that? Yes, he'd drink wine, beer. So he decided, okay, no beer. That doesn't mean you double up on the wine. And then he wouldn't. He had medication he was taking. He was afraid of going loopy. So he wouldn't do that. Gout, painful as everything. Dialysis. Hated every minute. Hated it so bad that when he shared the stories afterwards, I was afraid that he would say something that would keep people who needed it from doing it. I said, baby, is there a way that you can soften that up? Because, once a coach, always a coach. He's going to say, just like this, and then give you a moment to digest it. And then he comes back at you with the rest of it. That's just his way. They would allow him to do that, whereas, they have an issue if I were to do it that way. So, and I'm a different personality anyway. I don't go for it like that. Dialysis. He had the permacath, and we were headed toward the, is it peritoneal? Peritoneal? Okay, headed for that. So what we would do when he was in the dialysis center for his 3-hour treatment, I would go home and I'd have fruit. And I'd put it in the freezer, slightly freeze it, just so he'd have something, because nothing tasted good. Nothing. By the time 3 months, 5 months rolled around, he was at end-stage renal failure. Pacemaker. Had the defibrillator pacemaker put in. Dr. Otis did that here with Central Georgia Heart Center. Did a great job. He said, Coach, we're just going to put it in there just like a little pocket calculator. We're just going to put it right there. Never shocked him, thankfully. Had the defibrillator pacemaker. All right. So here we have kidney failure. We have a blood pressure that is 50/43. So he asks the students sometimes, he says, what is the normal blood pressure? When they say 120/80, he said, mine was 50/43. They get it. That's why we now have, in May, February, we're busy. In May, we have the, what's your 120/80 high blood pressure awareness event. I go into smaller communities, underserved communities, and I raise awareness about that. What we're trying to do is learn how to write grants. You're not looking at a grant writer. We're trying to write grants so that we can get the blood pressure monitors, so that the individuals who are hypertensive or pre-hypertensive, either by that test, because we do the screenings there, or medications that they're on, can take a blood pressure monitor with them and document their trends so they can take it to the physician. Because I didn't mention to you, I'm the cheerleader behind the coach. I am not a physician. Okay? So, what's your 120/80 is High Blood Pressure Awareness Month, which is in May. All right. He has the transplant. After the transplant, or right before the transplant, he has shingles. All right. So he is one who would maintain our grass, and I know it by heart. This, you live with it, that's what happens. You become partially it. Don't forget who you are, but we have the 419 Bermuda grass. 419 Bermuda grass is the same grass that's on the Augusta Nationals, right? Beautiful. We had to go visit the Amen Corner, Amen, how many times? Just so that we can make sure we got it right. His coaching friends would come, ring the doorbell, and then they'd run out in the middle of the lawn with their putting. And then wait for him to open the door and go, and I won't tell you what he said about that. And so, but he loved that. He maintained it. Our neighbors thought that he mowed the lawn with scissors. And that's just his thing. He also took care of 4 athletic fields before they turned to AstroTurf. He would go in and he maintained those. He said, it's just like having a big lawn. So, and he would do that on his own. Healthy, fit, fine. and then this. So I mentioned that he was diabetic, and then bronchitis set in. He ended up with bronchitis, and you already have congestive heart failure. What do you do when everything is going on at one time? You try to find some help for it. So this is what we did. After he was told what was going on and what we needed to do, we went to Emory St. Joseph's in Atlanta. It was once just St. Joseph's until Emory merged with them. Here's what happened. We got there and we went in that June. Remember I told you we were at Houston Healthcare and they didn't have what we needed? We ended up with another doctor that was here in Macon. It was Dr. DeRogie, Mark DeRogie. And that group, which he was with the Central Georgia Heart Center, they said, we better send you to Emory. We went to Emory that day, so I'm in my capri pants and my little spring shirt, my heels, because you go into Atlanta, that means dinner out, right? And I was like, okay. But you know, when you don't know, you don't know. That's why we hold on to everything that you learn. And if you don't know, find out for us and come back, because we feel so misdirected when you told us this and it wasn't that. Also communicate it to us. It's okay to talk to us, communicate it with us. We had a nurse, we didn't have her long, we had a nurse that came in and I have the room, which I'd been in by that time 38 days, and however I had it set up, she'd always come and read me. And it made me feel like I was just unkept. I needed something to call my own because I'd been displaced from my home and from what was normal in my life. And so here she comes in, and she wheels in that little cart for the medicine, and he says, something's wrong with my hand. She says, I'll look at it in a minute. And he says, okay, something's swelling right there, which the IV, I guess, was coming out, or something was going on with the IV, which you have to change every 4 to 5 days. And so at the one point, he was taking the insulin shots in the back of the arm. It was like the Dalmatian. He told his students, he says, I got some bruises in my area, in my stomach because of the insulin shots. And he'd show them the pen and dial up the Novolog and show that to them, and Lantus, and show that that he would take that at night. He says, some are peanuts. He said, some are like oranges. And I walked into the restroom, and he was looking in the mirror, and I walked in, he said, and it made him self-conscious, and he said, Mama, look at me. It was insulin shots. At one time, something happened with the kidneys and the blood. He was on Procrit. Procrit is in the stomach. And you know what? That's not good. As Mama would say, that's good. That's in the stomach. And he was like, I don't know, I've never had this. Here's what's happening. And we get there June 23rd, and I'm thinking I'm going out that night, going somewhere to eat that night. Instead, they roll him from the doctor's office straight into the hospital, through a tunnel into the hospital. They begin dialysis, and they start the process to put him on the waiting list. This was not what I expected. So that's June, July, August. He made me angry with something one day. I don't know what that was, can't remember, doesn't matter. And I went downstairs into the waiting area. And when I went into the waiting area, I was sitting there on a little stool like that. And I sat there and I was looking at the floor, and I noticed boots. I'm there with spring summer shoes, and I'm noticing boots. So I look up at the people, and they got scarves and hats on. The seasons had changed. That was exciting news when you've been closed up and sheltered in, which didn't bother me here recently. Been there, done that. I went upstairs and I opened the blinds, twisted them open, and said, baby, can you look? And he could look barely from the rails of the hospital bed. And he looked and he said, what is it? I said, that's the tree line. Beautiful array of the fall colors. He said, the seasons have changed. I said, right, am I right? Help me. Because I'm going out and I'm going to be talking to people. You got to make sure you... Okay. Got the swan gants, the permacath, intra-aortic balloon pump. Now we've got something else that they're factoring in, never done at Emory St. Joseph. We would be the first. You ready? I heard of the LVAD before, the left ventricular assist device. Well, at that time, there were some questions about it, and the nurses would pull me to the side. Did I mention that we do hold on to the things that you say? And they pull me to the side and they say, well, let's wait on this. Let's not do this. Let's not do the other. Let's just wait and get more information. Well, time is now starting to run out on us. He's starting to get the jaundice in the eyes. His voice almost always as strong as ever. But now his voice is kind of cracking a little bit. I'm running out of the entertainment kind of things to do for him. And the doctor walks in, and y'all, I grabbed this on my way out of the door. I said, they might appreciate this. I'm going to take this until I get a chance to redo it. The biventricular assist device, the BiVAD. The BiVAD was because the left and right ventricle obviously was shot. So what he has now are these 4 garden hose size tubes that are implanted in the upper abdomen. So now that is going from the upper abdomen with everything else into his original heart. The biventricular device had never been used, so when they decided to do that, they came in. This picture is day 8, and I'm going to share it with y'all. Day 8 of this. He's on the phone getting football scores. He's talking to the security guard because they had a game the night before and he wanted to know the football scores. And I'm thinking, do what? So now he's under test. They say, can we test? Can we take notes? Can we find out how this works? Because we've never done it before. And it's obvious. So we have the left dialed up on this top machine, this computer, the right, and both of these acting as his heart, right? Mm-hmm. So while it's acting as his heart, we see the blood. And they'd have to move this little gizmo, this little object that was on the tubes. They'd have every hour, the nurses would come in and slide it along the length of the tubes to keep it warm, the blood warm going in his body. Okay? They would do that. Here's what really I always love to point out. Right here on the top shelf, and you all see that, is the business card of the rep, just in case anything happens. Just in case. The nurses are outside practicing on a machine so that they would know how it works. And I'm sitting in there reading the Bible, and I hear them say, whoops, that's not what you want to hear when your loved one is on the machine, is whoops. So the biventricular assist device, here's how your patients are sometimes going to be. Those kinds of patients, never sick, not accustomed to anything, are used to a different lifestyle and whatever else, just don't want to be there. On his wrist, you see that there's some wrapping of the gauze and the tape around his wrist. That's not where the IV is. Hair. The bracelets were pulling the hair on his arm, y'all, and that's what, and see, to you all, you're thinking, you know, you better be glad you got that red one on there that tells us what you're allergic to. We didn't know he was allergic to phenergan. They gave him phenergan because he'd never been on medicines before, and now all of a sudden he's on so much medication daily that they had to give him something for his stomach, phenergan. They gave him a quick little shot of it, and he went into respiratory failure. All of this started to swell. I'm looking at him thinking, you know, and all of these glands are swelling under here. And the nurse comes in, and I said, baby, I'll be back. I'm going to the gift shop. Baby. Hey. Because he's easy to wake up. You know, anything come across the lawn. You remember that lawn? Anything coming across the lawn, he's like, beep, beep, beep. Something's going across my lawn. It's a cat, you know. But he's very sensitive to things. That's why he would ask his nurses at night, when you come in, let me know that you're here. Because he didn't want to open his eyes and somebody's reaching across him. It would startle him. He didn't mind if you would, on your way in, because sometimes they take that sliding door and slide it so coming in because you're doing your work, you're doing your job. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And you're focused on it, and you're good at it. And here he wants to have tape with some gauze around it so that it won't pull the hair. You know, they said that about him. They said, well, his skin is so sensitive, and it had begun to get very soft, very sensitive. As a matter of fact, after the transplant, I was like, really? I don't know those hands. I don't know. You know, let's see. Because the texture of his skin changed because now he's more pliable, remember? He's got blood flowing the way it's supposed to, and he's softer and tender. So he goes in, he has this, he's with our nurses here that he's fallen in love with, and they're with us. Brooke helped us every day. So when Brooke came in, we knew when Brooke was going to be off. 2 on, 3 off, or 5 days on and 3 off, or 2 what? And she'd come in the room and she'd say, what day am I not going to be here? And he'd say, Wednesday and Thursday. She said, you got it. So we would always bring the Florida nurse in and the Georgia nurse together. Because that was always entertainment for us. Okay? So we'd bring them in. But I wanted to show you all this, and I'm going to leave it up here somewhere where you can come by and see it. This is very important to me, and the reason that I took this picture with him, put it on those hospital footies, the reason I did that on day 50, November 15th, remember this June, and then we had a couple of weeks where we had to go back and he was admitted into the hospital, and now it was from August to November, he's getting ready to leave, 50 days later. We stayed 50 days. The surgeon came in and he said, Coach, he didn't coach him either, Coach, what do you think? About ready to go home? He said, no, I don't. He said, oh, okay. He said, so now, what do you think the problem is with going home? He said, I'm not feeling, I don't know. And he said, okay, I got you. They did an EKG. Before he left the hospital, they did one of the biopsies where they go into the jugular and they come across, and the biotones get a little piece of that tissue and then go back get a little piece of that tissue, and they do it 3 times. He passed the test and everything, and this time the surgeon walked in, Dr. Jeffrey S. Miller, one of the top 5 surgeons, came in and he said, so Coach, we're going to let you go home tomorrow. He didn't ask him if he was ready. Instead, this time he took a different approach. You're going to go home tomorrow. And he said, okay. And just his mannerism, watching him walk out, and when the door closed, he looked at me, he said, am I ready? Because I'm sitting in the recliner in the corner. And I said, we're ready. We're ready. So they pushed him out, and we go out, and it's awesome. He says, God has been so good to us, because that's one of the 4 things I've learned as the co-founder of this organization. First of all, I see God in everything. I always do. I see God in everything. Secondly, can't do this alone. It takes a group of people. It takes a lot of people to come together. I have seen nurses work together when it's near the end of the shift, and you all are charting. You know, you got to chart everything and catch up and get all the, and then you have the technician over here, and she says, blood pressure is 120/80, and then you're all trying to get, it's almost time to go home. And we like to go home when it's time to go home, especially those long shifts that you're working, right? And then you have to deal with my husband who has hair on his arm. Okay? So, you know, and they're charting, and then right around that time he says, can I get a Percocet? And she says, yes. And then he gets that Percocet because I found out morphine makes him hallucinate. Y'all didn't tell me that. He kept asking me who the little girl was in the yellow dress. And I'm thinking, where have I been where there was, you know, I couldn't, you know, I said, baby, where were we? He said, who's that? And I'm looking over there at nothing, and I'm thinking all this weird stuff. You know? I'm like, what? You know, I don't know. Percocet. So we had to go from morphine to Percocet. Then he loved that. Because, you know, this is a person who did not know what a colonoscopy was. The doctor looked at me, I said, I'll tell him. I'll let him know, you know. He had that go lightly. He didn't go too lightly. It didn't happen that way for him. Matter of fact, the first time he couldn't keep it. And they had to come up with something. So, you know, it is amazing the things that you all will see, the things that you go through, the things that I used to tell him I would work with pediatrics. You know, but then anything else. And then we went to Eggleston when we were mentoring a family who had a child with heart problems. We got back in that car, and I closed the door, and I looked at him, and he was leaning against the steering wheel. He said, give me a minute. And I said, you know, because you'll see so many things that, you know, we thought were unnatural. But this is what he did when he got out. He wrote a book. Did I mention that he wrote a book? I don't know if I mentioned that he wrote a book. He wrote a book, and at that time he was able to walk in the neighborhood. And everybody in the neighborhood would yell at him or lift their windows and raise the windows and yell out at him, "Hey, coach." He didn't coach them either. But he would start to be just the motivation after having gone through so much. And speaking of going through so much, he wrote about it in his book. My eyes used to work a whole lot better 7 years ago. But I'm becoming my mama, and that's fine. Yeah, I did this, and I was like, when we started doing this and going through this ordeal, I was 52. I'm 61 now. And I will not stop advocating for health, heart health, doing those things we have to do. I took a 21-day opportunity to get myself back into shape during the time we were sheltered in. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I feel so much better. I feel so much better. I wanted to share this with you, if I may. Let me find it first, and then we'll read it. It is kind of reflecting how he felt, what he went through during that opportunity to meet fine folks like you. And, you know, I ask the young people sometimes, I said, do you have a question? What questions do you have for me? And they'd say, well, because young people want to know, right? They're like, is he the same person he was before he had the transplant? Most definitely. He was still just as competitive, even though he was taking 32 pills a day for life. 32 pills a day for life. He had the allopurinol, Crestor. Y'all remember these? Yes. Now, you don't remember that one? Yes. And here's what being Southern helps me to do. Hydrolazine. Okay? I love it. We go up there, and they wouldn't correct us. They would let us have it, you know. And so we need to make sure we get some of that hydrolazine, you know. And they say, and finally, Dr. O'Connell, who had been traveling for years teaching people how to set up the LVAD programs, had just gotten back from Japan. And he went away for 2 weeks. That was that 2 weeks I was saying. There was a little stint in there right before we were admitted. And he came back from Japan, and we finally said, yeah, and we have allopurinol, Crestor, hydrolazine. He said, hydrolazine. Just like that, we're like, okay. And we looked at omeprazole, prednisone. Oh gosh, when he got off the prednisone and the tacrolimus, he was so happy because he was shaking like a leaf on a tree. And he would tell the students, he said, y'all, he says, I know you don't understand this. He says, but we would eat, and I'd have a full fork of peas, and by the time I get it to my mouth, I'd have 3 peas left on it. True enough. We would be outside, and he wanted to change the light bulb on the patio. And I kept looking, what is he doing out there? And I walked out, and I'm always buffering. Remember, I'm the cheerleader behind the coach, and he could not get the bulb into screw it in, and it was going tink, 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 you know. And so I'm talking and go, yeah, and then tomorrow, and I reach out and touch it and hold it in place. Well, and then I get ready to walk off. Here he comes with the screwdriver, you know. And finally, when he could get past that, oh gosh, he felt so much better. Warfarin. I was a little worried about that warfarin. That rat poison? Okay, because the people thought I wasn't going to find out. Yes, that's what it was. Magox. What was that, magnesium? Is it? Ugh, unreal. The potassium, of course. The Prograf, of course. And of all of that, we had oxycodone just in case he needed it, never would. The Novaloft, the Lantus, and there was one other I was going to mention to you. Oh yeah, aspirin. I mean, with all of that, now you've got aspirin, and he knew them. He would put them in order. He would take them the same time every day. He would chart his vitals, morning and evening, and kept up with them. That's how we found out that he had another problem going on. All of a sudden, and I'm going to get back to this, I haven't forgotten. All of a sudden, he's gaining 60 to 80 pounds in a week. The tricuspid valve in the new heart decides to go on a blink. And we're like, what was like the Pillsbury Doughboy. We never had this happen before. I didn't know what it was. And after the transplant, nothing can go wrong here. The tricuspid valve. So here we go. And you know the heart is beautiful. You've seen it. You've seen it. It looks like a little ballerina dancing and doing the arabesque in the valves that are opening and closing. And it's a beautiful, God knew what he was doing. And it was awesome. It's beautiful to see. But the tricuspid valve goes bad. Now we would think that this would have been the problem when I talk about risk factors. Smoking, you think that would be the problem. Now when I show this to high schoolers, they're amazed. They applaud me. You guys just looked. But you know why? They're like, is that what they look like back then? I'm like, back when, you know? Back then, here's the thing. The reason we shadowboxed this in 1997, that doctor's visit that I took when he was in denial, and I went with him, and I found out that he needed a transplant, he was smoking the pack that's open. The other ones were tall people, 6'3", put them, were up high in the cabinet waiting. I work at a Fortune 500 tobacco manufacturing plant here in Macon to get them for free. And I did every afternoon, enabling. Didn't know, didn't understand. It was what he did. But that day, he was told, Coach, if you smoke another cigarette, you'll die. That's what the plaque says that he shows to the students, quit or die. 1997. He quit that day. No patch, no pill, no other encouragement, but you're going to lose your life if you don't. So that is exactly what he did. Let me quickly stop for a moment and ask any questions, any comments, anything that you all thought about that gets me in.
How long was he on the BiVAD before he actually got a heart?
Great question. Great question. The doctor said, Coach, you can only be on the BiVAD for 4 weeks. He was on the BiVAD 3 weeks.
Wow.
3 other hearts had come in, but they were not a match for him. So we know the matching and all of that, you know, the blood type, the size. You know, at that time he said someone between the age of 14 and 40, that kind of thing. But he had some snips, but he never had the one that said go. So at 1:10 a.m., when that door slid open and the charge nurse came in, her name also Cynthia, she said, Coach Malone, we have a potential heart for you. Key word. Because you don't want to give them something that you're not going to be able to provide. You know, you're just doing the best that you can. And he looked at me. The process began. You know the process. They put them in the tent, that little aluminum tent, you know, to keep all the infections and everything. Those things that they could remove, they started removing them. Betadine from head to toe. He used to tell the students, I was a golden black man. You know? And he had betadine on him. And they were getting him ready. They were doing, and I kept hearing this sound. Ladies and gentlemen, what's that sound I keep hearing? A woo. What is that noise? A woo. So I'm standing there watching everything happen, and I look behind the privacy curtain because I hear extra sound. What is that noise? Because you know, your senses are very heightened and very keen to everything around you. And I hear this, and I've heard so many things like beeps and pole beep, and nobody would come and reset that doggone IV when it ran out. So I figured out how to do it, you know. And it was beeps, and it was ticks, and it was clicks all through the night, and it was other people's clicking and ticking in CVICU as well. What is that woo 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 sound? And I lean back, and I see the charge nurse waving her hand over the paper towel dispenser. And it's going, and she's going, and then she's holding it behind the privacy curtain where the nurse was so emotional, she was behind the curtain. That was the woo-woo sound. She was happy for us. It was an awesome opportunity. The nurses on the 3rd floor were applauding. You know, I'm the type person, you take me out for birthday celebration, and somebody else is having a birthday, I don't care if you're embarrassed. I'm clapping for them. You know, happy birthday. That's just my personality. You know, I'm clapping for them. Well, the third floor, they start clapping. I put my Bible down and I walked over to the door. And I looked left to right and I said, hey, what were we clapping for? And it's because somebody had medevac a heart in. It wasn't ours, but a medevac landed on it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, really? You know, because you get caught up. You become family with everybody, and you all become family with each other because you're having the same kinds of things go on. You're having a patient who describes their ordeal similar to this. A month ago, we walked through the doors of doctor's offices, fate unknown. I have been stuck, injected, probed, wheeled, transported to, transported from, covered, uncovered, peeked at, totally exposed, tears wiped, prayers felt, prayers difficult to pray. I have smiled at, been introduced to, stuck again, encouraged, discouraged, helped, cared for, left alone, had dialysis, blood drawn, cut on, tubes inserted, tubes dislodged, operated on, breathing tested, counseled, and much more. I lay in the bed sometimes and hope no one will come through that door. In the book, A Second Chance, he tells the story about his life, our life, and he shows the depiction of what the transplant ordeal was like. But there was, how much longer do I have? About 10 minutes, perfect. But that story became a powerful story and a good story. People ask me a lot of times, was it worth it? Absolutely it was. Absolutely it was. Was it difficult? Absolutely it was. Absolutely. But I want to introduce you to my Mr. November. He became the November recognition for the Life and Transplantation Calendar with Lifelink of Georgia. That was in 2013. Interestingly enough, that was a couple of months after having had the tricuspid valve surgery. So he had the 3 pillows, he had the biventricular assist device, the BiVAD, to function as his heart. 3 weeks later, they go back in to perform the transplant. In less than 2 years, they go back in with the tricuspid valve surgery, a pig valve. And the children would say, a pig's valve? And he would say, oink, oink. Okay? And the look of it, he would explain to them, looks as though, he said, you're looking into your garbage disposal. It has that look in it, and it functions very well. He had no problems with that at all. So, he was born October 10th, 1955. He had the transplant in his new life November 3rd, 2010. In October 2015, I took him for what we call a tune-up. I took him back to the transplant facility. When I took him there, he had a rapid heart rate. Well, what's going on? Remember I said he keeps his vitals morning and evening? So he knew he had a rapid heart rate. We called on Friday. They said, come in on Wednesday. We went in on that following Wednesday. And when we went in on that following Wednesday, they said, we are going to do a procedure tomorrow. So they did the TEE. Okay? So they did the TEE on Thursday. Thursday evening he comes back, the doctor calls me up in the room and he says, Miss Malone, he says, Miss Coach. I became Miss Coach. Miss Coach, no infection, no rejection, heart walls are strong. I text that to my daughters. Great news. This is Thursday. Thursday evening they come in and they do the blood work and they do the vitals for the evening before it's time to go home. And I look over at the little you know, the little thing on the stand, it takes his temperature, and you know, you have the little white plastic stick, and then you pop it off. Okay? Don't have that routine down or what? And so it goes, and she popped it off, and I leaned over a little bit to see what it said. That was Thursday. Thursday night, he's flirting with me. And I'm going, you know what? You're not about to be talking with CVICU at Emory St. Joseph's, so we're not going to have that going on. But this is Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Let's just get through the weekend. We get home Tuesday, Wednesday, somewhere along in there. So he holds out his hand, and we sit there, and we watch these marathon episodes of Martin Lawrence. Okay, and laugh. We laugh because it was funny, but we also laugh because I can't believe we thought that was funny back then, right? So we laughed at that, and that Friday a doctor comes in and he says, okay, coach, he says, this is what we are going to do. And I said, here we go. He says, we are going to take you for a quick and easy procedure. And I was like, okay, good, we're going to do something quick and easy. I like quick and easy. That means you don't have to cut him anymore. That's my thought. You know, I'm like, thank you, Jesus, we don't have to cut him anymore. He's been through a lot. There's a lot going on. And we're a little nervous about being in here because this has never happened in the 4.5 years of the transplant. He says, we're going to do something like go in and solder off. You know what we're talking about?
Ablation.
What is it? Ablation, exactly. We're going to do something like solder off where we think it is a leakage. So they were going to do the ablation, right? And me being the talker that I wasn't, but I am now, said, yeah, he peaked a low-grade fever last night. He said, he had fever? I said, yes. The PA goes out to the nurse's station. She comes back and she shares it. And I saw it in his face. And I could hear my own heartbeat. And I waited. He says, scrap that. We're not going to do it. Let's do more blood work. He says, you have fever. It trends up. So they come back. They do these 20 or 30 vials of blood, y'all. And everything just blew up. I guess it changes colors or it does whatever it does. But whatever it does, it did it. And they said, infection. What is this? Listeria? Uh-huh. Listeria? Uh-huh. And we're going to do this, and we're going to try to figure out what this is. We got to figure out where it came from, and etc. They do whatever they can do. This is Friday. Saturday, the Georgia-Alabama football game is coming on. Okay? That's the entertainment. The Georgia-Alabama football game is coming on. The good thing about it, he loves Georgia. I'm like, hey, me too, except when you have to roll tide. You know? And so I'm thinking, this is good, this is good, this is entertaining. He's a coach. I have to do something. He doesn't like being caged in. And so he likes to watch all the preliminary things. He wants to know who's hurt. He wants to know the statistics. He wants to know all the pregame stuff. Me, toss the coin, kick the ball. Okay? And so he gets up and he takes the IV pole and he goes into the restroom. And I hear him say, oh God, I am so dizzy. Why can't I be like normal people? I said, what's going on? He says, so dizzy, baby. Well, you know, when you got dizzy and nauseated, Mama would put the cold white towel in the sink, right? So I get the towel and I put cold water on it. And I said, okay, let me go get Maury. That's our nurse. They will remember your names. I can tell you about Maury, Amy, Brooke, Samantha, Stan, John, Joe, Terrence, Paul, Keith. They're going to remember your name. They're going to associate things with you. They're going to love you like I love you too. They're going to love you all the same because you were there. You were there. You're not doing this for anything. You're questioning a lot, but you're not doing this for nothing. We need you to do this. Because when Mara came in, she ordeal he had never coded before. And I walked out of the room because when he came out of the restroom and I told him, I said, wait for me, wait. Maury will be here in a minute. He comes out and I walk over to him. Well, he had been flirting. So he leans in and I tiptoe and lean up. And the love of my life of 30 years collapsed in my arms. And I cannot believe it. I said, baby. And he gets to the floor, and I'm protecting his head and using the door jamb because he's heavy now, still to me, even though he's lost all that weight. And we're sliding to the floor. And, you know, there's a sound associated with it that I have never told my children about. And he looks, and he manages to look at me. And I said, Chip, I got you, baby. I got you. I walked out, but I didn't know that I was walking out to see him for the last time. Here's what happened. They came in, when the doctor came back, and they'd done everything that they could do, he said, Miss Coach, let's go talk. I said, okay, because I'm thinking we got a game plan. We're going to figure out what we're going to do by next week, that Tuesday, Wednesday. We may be here a little longer. And that was not the case. And I thought, okay. And I thought it was going to be okay because as family, I heard the crash cart coming. I had heard it many times before. It just wasn't for us. And they were saying, Code Blue, room 340. Code Blue, room 340. And I'm like, okay, but it's going to be fine. We've been through so much, and it's going to be, God has a plan. He's showing me something different. It's going to be fine. And it still is, y'all. It still is. It's okay. But the more senior nurse at the end walked past with the younger nurse, and I could hear the stethoscope as they walked tap on the plastic on their badges. I could hear them coming. That's how heightened everything became. And I could even hear when they went from carpet to tile, and their shoes went squeak, you know? And the younger nurse said to the more senior nurse, I wonder if Starbucks is open on Saturday. That gave me hope. You know, Starbucks, that's what I'd be thinking about, right? It gave me hope. And then when he said, let's talk, and he told me he didn't know what was going on. He wasn't sure what had happened, and they were just as surprised as I was. Yeah, I had to have a moment, imagine. And I said, you're going to have to hold my hand. And he did. Moments. We had some awesome moments and some great memories. In 30 years, that's why I can still do this. That's why I can tell you that Hope for the Heart, my organization does to teach the students to be smart with their hearts. This is what we do when I go to the elementary school. So I'm dramatizing that for you. Hope with the heart. What's your 120/80 high blood pressure awareness event? The Hearty Laughs Comedy Show. And my premier event is the Cardiac Car Show. We just had our record-breaking Cardiac Car Show. The first Saturday marks the anniversary of the transplant. We had it in Warner Robins at the Home Depot. We registered 115 vehicles. We needed a parking lot stretcher, and the city is looking to help us out next year, and we may grow. So when you hear about chipping away at heart disease, we are here. We're chipping away at heart disease. I'm doing my part, and I support you in your part. Let me know how we can help you, what we can do to improve what we do, and that is what we'll do, but we'll do it together. Okay? Thank you for your time. I'm watching the clock. I think we better end it there. Any questions, anything? I'll still be hanging out up here, okay?
No, right?
I thought that was a part of immersion, though. Gotta hold it together.